When the Duke of Monmouth landed at Lyme Regis in June of 1685, he had a lot of weapons with him. 4 light field guns, 1,500 muskets, 1,500 suits of cavalry armour, bandoliers, 500 pikes, 500 swords, 250 barrels of gunpowder, plus assorted carbines and pistols, some with quadruple barrels. It was quite a start. But despite this initial and impressive array of weaponry and armour, it would not be enough. Monmouth knew that his campaign depended on not only the gentry coming over to his colours, but them also bringing in their own personal armouries, whether this was armour, muskets, pikes, swords, gunpowder, or even cavalry horses. On top of this, the Duke was intending to raid any local armouries for equipment, and to pick up any discarded militia weapons as well. After the debacle at Axminster and the fleeing of the Somerset militia, Nathaniel Wade reported, "It was little better than a flight, many of the soldiers' coats and arms being recovered and brought to us." A certain Mr. Williams concurred with this report. Several of the militias of Dorset and Somerset came in with their arms. One of the great houses targeted, but not affected, by the requisition for arms was Longleat House. But despite the warning of, "We will break down your door to find them and may fire it," the house was spared, and the 13 cases of pistols, 9 muskets, some old birding pieces, 36 pikes, 30 halberds and 3 suits of armour were left untouched. As described before, Monmouth brought over enough equipment to arm the beginnings of an army, muskets, pikes and armour. But from the very first days, he lacked effective cavalry horses fit for taking on the well-bred, well-fed and well-trained mounts of King James's regular army. And as a former Captain General of his country's army, he knew he would have to counter a new type of soldier in the King's army. A type of soldier who was well equipped and seen as the elite. These were the grenadiers, now attached to most regiments in the King's army. These tall, strong men were equipped with flintlock muskets, hatchets, plug bayonets, and of course, grenados, or grenades. These shock troops could upset any plans Monmouth had, and he needed to come up with something to counter these elite troops. Monmouth acted quickly and sent out commissioners into the local countryside, avoiding the harassing of royal patrols, to find farms and blacksmiths. Their job was to obtain by any means possible scythe blades. On the 19th of June it was reported, were issued out warrants and subscribed requiring all constables in their respective hundreds and tithings to bring into the camp at Taunton by Saturday morning at 10 of the clock all scythes. Andrew Pascal also transcribed a copy of one of these warrants which stated, "These are in His Majesty's name, to will and require you, on sight hereof, to search for, seize, and take all such scythes as can be found in your tithing, paying a reasonable price for the same, and bring them to my house tomorrow by 1 of the clock in the afternoon, that they may be delivered into the Commission's officers, that are appointed to receive them at Taunton by 4 of the same day, and you shall be reimbursed by me what the scythes are worth, and hereof fail not, as you will answer to the contrary, given under my hand this 20th of June, in the first year of His Majesty's reign." Many of these scythesmen would also have been equipped with a sword, and as Taylor points out, scythers had pistols sticking in at their girdles, and broadswords in waist belts. This would not have been universal, and most would surely not have looked like this famous image of a Monmouth rebellion scythesman. So once obtained, these vicious farming implements would be reattached to a pole to make a medieval, even ancient weapon. Ancient perhaps, but still terrifying and lethal. Monmouth would form companies of up to 100 men, all armed with a scythe, as well as mixed companies of scythesmen and musketeers. This body of troops would act in an anti-cavalry role, as well as shock troops, and would even put the fear of God into battle-hardened soldiers who had seen service in Tangier against the barbarous Moors. Later on in our series, we will see just how a formidable opponent these scythesmen really were. So this type of weapon, especially when compared to the new grenadier, might have seemed archaic, but it does show just how good an administrator and planner Monmouth was. He was bringing all his experience and expertise to bear, and in the early days of the rebellion, it proved highly effective. It could have been his experience against the Covenanters at Bothwell Bridge, who used scythes themselves, that might have given Monmouth the original idea. For our video on Monmouth's triumph in Scotland, click here. But no matter how fearful these weapons were to be, the need for the scythe as an improvised weapon showed the desperate needs for arms in the rebel army. The anonymous account of 1689, probably by Colonel Venner, complained about the Duke's decision not to fight the Duke of Albemarle and the Devon militia on the 14th of June. The account follows, "In the end proved fatal to us, for had he but followed them, we would have had all their arms." The rector of Chedsey again, Andrew Pascal, noted the rebel army as they marched into Bridgewater on the 21st of June. His account describes the state of the rebel weapons. He, Monmouth, marched into Bridgewater with about 5,000 men, armed about 4,000, unarmed about 1,000. Sir Thomas Bridges confirmed the rector's account. His men were some well armed, others indifferent, some not at all, only having an old sword or a stick in their hand. There are so many reports about the Duke's lack of weaponry, it seems it was such an issue that it was actually restraining the army from growing. In July 1685, Richard Goodenough, Monmouth's paymaster, lamented that if they had had 20,000 arms, they had had as many men, but brought only 2,500 arms. Taylor's account again, on the eve of Sedgemoor, tells us that Monmouth had, in addition to better armed contingents and his scythers, 3,000 foot more, some with halberds, prongs, bills, or what they could get, and in addition to 400 horse, completely armed, about 300 horse more, which some had arms and others none. Elsewhere, he describes the army as badly armed. So were there any reports as to how these scythes were used and what damage they did? Well, yes, as it happens. Taylor's report, after speaking to some survivors of the Battle of Sedgemoor, describes the scythes. For indeed these scythes were a desperate weapon, lopping off at one stroke either head or arm, and I saw a man laying among the dead, whose back was clove down by one strike of these scythes, and a horse whose head at one strike was almost separated from his body. He also explains about the orders scythesmen were given before going into battle. Now that their orders were to cut off the bridle arm, thereby disable the riders and defend themselves, the which they to the last stoutly did. Adam Wheeler, the royalist drummer, left us one of the very best accounts of the Monmouth Rebellion and the Battle of Sedgemoor. He described the scythe as cruel and new invented murdering weapons. A young boy who witnessed the battle had the scythe seared on his memory. John Oldmixon later remembered, "The soldiers, asleep in their tents, might have been cut to pieces by the scythesmen, of which the Duke had 500, and the terror of the weapon unleashed on the sleeping royal army would have added to the slaughter and horror of the night, and given the rest of the Duke's forces an easy victory." So how many scythes were actually at the night fight of Sedgemoor? Well, it's not easy to nail this down, as all the accounts differ quite a lot. The King's own account stated that the rebel foot consisted of 5 great battalions, each of which had one company of at least 100 scythesmen instead of grenadiers. So against the King stating that there were 500 scythesmen, Taylor claims there were 300, whilst Andrew Pascal claims there were 1,000. The King believed that the scythesmen, being attached to each regiment, were used as shock troops, like the Royal Grenadiers, along the very lines that Monmouth was thinking. Being integral parts of a regiment is underlined by the contemporary pack of playing cards, which was published mere months after Sedgemoor. Although formed as units within regiments, at Sedgemoor it was reported that scythesmen were grouped together into an independent unit. Monmouth ranged both his horse and foot forces and put them in order. Himself and Count Horn commanded the infantry. Count Horn commanded the scythesmen particular, and the left wing Monmouth commanded his main battalion of foot, and the Lord Grey commanded the body of cavalry. It is clear that for the night attack, the scythesmen were a totally separate unit. And finally, as seen already, the scythe gets a deserved mention in the commemorative pack of playing cards of 1685, illustrating incidents in Monmouth's rebellion and the bloody assizes. The 2 of diamonds shows a rehafted scythe on the ground at Frome. The Jack of Clubs shows rehafted scythes interspersed with pikemen. The King of Spades and the Queen of Clubs shows other scythes being abandoned at Sedgemoor. To finish this look on the scythe of the Monmouth Rebellion, there are 3 images of the scythe which I love. The first is called The Morning of Sedgemoor by Edgar Bundy in 1905. This wonderful atmospheric painting shows rebels waking in a barn on the morning of the Battle of Sedgemoor. There, front and centre, is a scythe being held by a rebel soldier. Was he on duty all night, keeping watch over his slumbering comrades, or could he just not sleep? Just behind the scythe seems to be Monmouth's own personal sea green standard, though unseen would be the words, "Fear nothing but God." You can feel the tiredness in this image. They would have been drenched through for days, footsore and dispirited, but right in the middle is a true symbol of defiance and courage, the scythe. The next, with Sedgemoor in the title, is called After Sedgemoor, completed in 1915 by Walter Crane. It offers a superb image of the men, both very young and old, traipsing away from the battlefield, with horses more used to the plough, and of course, the wickedly sharp scythe blade leading the way. The last image, also with the name Sedgemoor in its title, is From the Field of Sedgemoor by John Seymour in 1875. Fear is the key in this image, with a defeated rebel holding his head in terror, whilst the woman, probably his wife, is listening at the door for the expected bang from the man's pursuers. All hope is gone, and only the rope now awaits the man, and possibly the woman too. All 3 images are, to my mind, just wonderful and really gets the imagination going. So the scythe didn't give victory to Monmouth, but they instilled terror into the royalist troops, and gave heart to the brave rebels who fought like lions for their champion, the Duke of Monmouth. Our next video on the Monmouth Rebellion will see the Duke and his rapidly growing rebel army march to Bristol. If Bristol falls, many more will surely flock to his colours. He will have armouries, a huge port, defensive walls, access to other parts of the country. Who knows what disasters this will cause King James II and his shaky hold on the throne. We will find out soon enough. As always, thanks for watching.